That's the part the relief officer, a man named Adley, kept coming back to when he talked about it afterward, and he only talked about it once, to me. Because I was the one who had to type the incident report, and he wanted someone to understand why the report wouldn't say what he'd actually seen. The book was on the desk, open, squared to the edges the way a careful person leaves a thing they mean to come back to. The stove was cold. The instruments were still running, still writing their little needle lines on the drum, faithful as anything, recording the pressure and the wind for a station that had no one left in it to read them. Frances Moore had signed on to overwinter Cairn Fell for the money and the quiet in that order, and she had told the hiring board as much, which they liked, because the ones who came for romance never lasted, and the ones who came for the quiet sometimes did. She was 41. She'd spent 11 years servicing marine electronics on rigs and survey vessels, which is a job that teaches you to be alone in a small metal room with machines that will kill you if you stop paying attention, and to keep records so exact that a stranger could pick them up a year later and know precisely what you'd done and when. She was, by every account, the least fanciful person any of them had ever employed. That matters. I want you to hold on to that. The station sat at the head of a valley that closed with the first heavy snow and didn't open again until the melt, sometimes 5 months, sometimes 6. One building, low and long, stone below and timber above, with the instrument mast bolted to the gable end. A generator shed. A track down to the road that stopped being a track by December. From the door you could see the whole valley and nothing in it. That was the appeal she'd written in her application. I have read that application. She wanted somewhere she could hear herself think, she said, and I have thought a great deal about that phrase since, about how it assumes there is only one voice in there to hear. There's one more thing I know that isn't in the book, and I'll put it here because it matters later, or because I've decided it matters, which may not be the same thing. She had a brother, younger by 2 years. He'd overwintered stations himself, up north, years before, and it was him who'd first told her about the life. The good silence of it, he'd called it, the kind you have to earn. He died the spring before she signed on to Cairn Fell. Nothing dramatic. His heart, on an ordinary Tuesday, in a supermarket car park, with the shopping still in the trolley. She was the one who cleared his flat. In the application there's a line, and the board must have read it as the usual thing people write, but I don't read it that way anymore. She wrote, Asterisk, I'd like to understand what my brother found up there. Asterisk, they gave her the post partly on the strength of it. A person with a reason tends to last. The rest of what I know from the book. The log was the reason the job existed. The instruments recorded automatically, but the bound logbook was the legal record. The thing that stood up in a court or a review, and protocol was absolute. Every reading entered by hand in ink, dated and timed and initialed, no gaps, no pencil, no corrections except a single line through the error with the truth beside it. If the automatic drum failed, the handwritten log was all there was. Frances kept it the way she kept everything, which is to say beautifully. The early pages are a pleasure to look at. Small, even, upright letters. The hand of someone who has written the same numbers 10,000 times and finds a kind of peace in it. For the first 6 weeks there is nothing to tell. Wind, pressure, temperature, cloud. The occasional dry human line at the bottom of a day, which the protocol allowed for anything worth noting. Asterisk track impassable below the second cairn. Asterisk asterisk generator running hot, adjusted. Asterisk asterisk saw a hare, white already, early for it. Asterisk you can watch her settle into the solitude across those pages, watch the lines at the bottom of the days get a little longer, a little more like a person talking to themselves, because there's no one else to talk to. Nothing wrong in that. Everybody who overwinters starts talking to the walls. The walls are patient. It's the healthiest thing about the job. You can reconstruct the shape of her days from the readings and the little notes, and it's a good shape, an ordered one. Up before 6 for the first reading, the stove lit by then, and the kettle on it. The long forenoon of maintenance. She was always adjusting something: the generator, the anemometer's bearing, the seal on the north window that let the wind sing through in a particular note she disliked and mentions twice. Bread on Sundays, she'd found a tin of dried yeast in the stores and got it going, and there's a whole cheerful line about the first loaf coming out like a brick and the second one being almost right. A walk each afternoon while the light held, up to the second cairn and back, and she logged what she saw the way she logged everything. Ptarmigan, a fox's tracks crossing her own from the day before, the way the last sun came off the far wall of the valley the color of weak tea. She wasn't lonely. That comes through. She was a woman who had spent her life being good at being alone, and had finally been given a whole winter of it, at the head of a valley her brother had loved, and for 6 weeks it was the thing she'd wanted. There's one line from that early stretch I keep going back to, because it's so plainly happy and because of what it says. The 10th of December, the night before it started. Asterisk sat out on the step tonight, though it was bitter, just to hear it. No wind for once. You forget a place can be this quiet. Not empty quiet, full quiet, if that makes sense. Like the valley's holding its breath and you're inside the breath with it. Made me think of Danny. He'd have loved to be sat here. I keep catching myself about to say something to him. Talking to the walls already, and it's not even Christmas. Well, nobody up here to mind. Nobody up here to mind. She wrote that the night before the 11th. The first anomaly is on the 11th of December, and if I hadn't been told to look for it, I'd have gone straight past it. It's an entry at 0300s. A pressure reading, a wind reading, nothing unusual in the content. What's unusual is that Francis did not, as a rule, take a reading at 3 in the morning. The protocol wanted them at 6-hour intervals: midnight, 6, noon, 6, and she was rigid about it. You can set your watch by her all through November. But here is a reading at 0300, initialed the way she initialed everything, FM, and the numbers are plausible. They fit the trend, and the only strange thing about it, the only thing at all, is that the handwriting is a little different. Not much. A degree more slant. The M in her initials closed at the top where hers ran open. The kind of difference you'd see in your own hand if you wrote a note half asleep, in the dark, without your glasses. There's no comment on it that day. She either didn't notice, or didn't think it worth noting. But on the 14th, there's a line at the bottom of the day, in her ordinary hand, and it says, asterisk twice now, I found a reading logged that I don't remember taking. Both around 3 a.m. Handwriting's off. Must be doing it in my sleep. Never done that before, but there's a first time. Setting an alarm to catch myself. Asterisk, that's a completely reasonable thing to write. That is exactly what a sane, sensible person concludes. People do things in their sleep, especially alone, especially in the dark half of the year, especially when the thing they do every day of their waking life is walk to a desk and write numbers in a book. Of course she'd do it asleep. Of course. She set the alarm for 0245. The entry the next morning is almost cheerful. Asterisk sat up till gone 3:30. No sleepwalking, no fugue, nothing. Read a book. And there's no 3 a.m. entry today, so I suppose being awake stops it. Mystery solved, more or less. Asterisk, more or less. She underlined that later. I'll come back to it, because there is a 0300 entry on the 15th. It's just further down the page than she looked. She caught it on the 16th, and you can feel her stop being cheerful. Asterisk there is a 3 a.m. reading for the 15th. I was awake. I was sitting 10 feet from the book with the light on, and I did not get up, and I did not write in it, and it is there in the second handwriting. I've been over the whole station. Doors locked from inside, both of them. I checked the bolts at midnight, and they haven't been touched. No tracks in the snow. Went right round the building, nothing but mine from yesterday, half filled in. I am the only person here. I have to be the only person here. Asterisk, and then, a little lower, in a hand that's trying very hard to be steady. Asterisk, the reading is correct. That's what I keep getting stuck on. Whoever, whatever, took it, the pressure's right. I checked it against the drum. It's a good reading. Better space than mine. Asterisk, I need to say something here about how a person who isn't fanciful comes apart, because it's not the way films do it. There's no wild-eyed raving. It's slower and much worse than that, because it's reasonable the whole way down. Every single step Frances took was the correct step. That's what I find hard to be near even now, even just in the book. She did everything right, and it took her exactly nowhere she wanted to go. She ruled out sleepwalking by staying awake, and finding the entry appeared anyway. She ruled out an intruder by the bolts and the snow, and she checked those every day now, walking the perimeter at dusk, and she started photographing the untouched snow with the station camera, dating the film, building a case for a jury she must have known she was really building for herself. She considered, with the flat competence of someone who has read the safety manuals, carbon monoxide, because it makes you do things and forget them, and it makes you see and hear what isn't there. She checked the detector. It was fine. She didn't trust it. Good instinct, they lie. So she cracked the window an inch in killing cold and slept in her coat, and the entries kept coming, and a person with a working brain and fresh air does not have carbon monoxide, so she crossed it off. She was thorough. She was so thorough. The camera is its own small horror, and it's worth telling in full, because it's the clearest example of how doing the right thing led her nowhere. She'd started photographing the untouched snow to prove no one came in the night. Sensible. Evidence. But she went further than the snow. On the 18th, she set the station camera on the desk facing the logbook, on the long exposure the manual recommended for low light, and she wound it, and she went to bed, and she left it to watch the book all night in her place. She wanted to see the hand that wrote at 3. When the roll was finished, she developed it. There was a darkroom setup of sorts in the back store, red bulb and trays, left by some keeper years before, and she knew how, of course she knew how to do everything. The frames came out. She describes them one by one in the log, and it's unbearable, because they are all exactly the same. The desk, the book, the lamp. Frame after frame of the book lying open and no one there. All night. Nothing moving, and on the last frame, taken as the window grade toward dawn, the book is open to the next day's page, and there is a fresh 0300 reading on it in the second hand, and no hand in the picture, and no one in the chair, and no blur where a person had been, because a long exposure catches a moving thing as a smear of itself, and there is no smear. Asterisk nothing wrote it. Asterisk she put at the bottom of that day. Asterisk Foss 36 photographs of nothing writing it. Asterisk she tried to leave. I want that on the record too, because people always ask why she didn't just go, as if the not going were the strange part and not everything else. She tried on the 19th. There's a short entry, written in the morning, that just says asterisk walking out. Enough. Asterisk and then nothing until the evening when there's a longer one, and it's calm in the way that costs a person everything to manage. Got past the second cairn and the tracks gone under a slip. Whole slope came down in the last blow. 20 foot of it. No way across and no way round without going up onto the tops. And I'm not going onto the tops in January on my own with the light I've got. Radios for weather and emergencies. And this isn't... What would I even say? Come quick. There's handwriting. Turned round and came back. The book was open when I got in. I know I closed it. I'm nearly sure I closed it. Asterisk, and then, lowest on the page, small. Asterisk, it was waiting up for me. That's a stupid thing to write. But that's what it felt like, coming in cold and seeing the lamp still on and the book still open, like something had sat up, waiting, glad I was home. Asterisk, by the 20th, the second hand wasn't confining itself to 3 in the morning. It was writing readings all through the log, always accurate, always a little neater than hers, and it had started, here and there, to add things. Not much at first. A weather note, asterisk wind backing, front by morning, asterisk and there would be a front by morning. Her hand, underneath, tight, Asterisk, it's right about the weather before I am. I don't like that it's better at my job than me. Dasterisk, before she tried to reason with it, it started to know things. That's the turn that took the last of the ground out from under her, and I understand it. Because a stranger writing in your book is a horror you can hold at arm's length. It's outside you, it's an intruder, it's a problem with a shape. But the second hand began to write things that weren't weather and weren't readings, and they were things about her, and then they were things only she knew. The 23rd, in the calm hand, unasked. Asterisk, you stood at the mast a long time today. Asterisk, she had. She'd written it herself, higher up the page, that she'd stood at the mast in the wind longer than she meant to, thinking. But she'd been at the mast, outside, with the book indoors on the desk. Asterisk, you stood at the mast a long time today. Asterisk, written by a hand that had no eyes, from inside a shut room, about a thing that happened in the snow. And then the 25th, Christmas Day, and there's no note from her about the day at all. No loaf, no walk, just the readings. And beneath the noon one, in the calm hand. Asterisk, Danny liked it up here best on the clear cold ones. You were right to come. He'd have said so. Asterisk, she never wrote her brother's name in the log after the 10th. She'd kept him out of it on purpose, I think. Kept him back in the private part of herself where the book couldn't reach. And the book reached him anyway, and got his name right, and got the shape of him right. Asterisk, he'd have said so, asterisk, and there is no reading, no bearing, no protocol in the world that accounts for a book on a desk at the head of a shut valley knowing the dead. Her hand, underneath, and you can see the pen shook. Asterisk, how do you know that? How do you know that? Asterisk, no answer that day. The answer came later, at the very end, and it wasn't an answer. She tried to reason with it. This is the part Adley couldn't put in a report. On the 21st, there's an entry in her hand that isn't a reading at all. It's addressed to the other handwriting, and it says, Asterisk, if you're going to keep writing in my book, you can at least tell me who you are. Asterisk, and she left the book open on the desk overnight with the lamp on and a pen beside it, the way you'd leave milk out for something, and in the morning there was a 0300 reading, correct, and beneath it, in the second hand, 4 words. I've held the page. The 4 words are pressed hard into the paper, harder than the readings, as if whatever formed them was concentrating. And they are, unmistakably, not her handwriting. But they're not nothing like her handwriting either. That's the thing that turns your stomach when you see it in person. It's the hand of someone who learned to write from the same person she did. It's her hand as it might have been if one small thing very early had gone differently. A sister's hand. A hand from just next door to her own. Asterisk, I'm not sure yet. Asterisk, not asterisk, I'm no one. Asterisk, not asterisk, I've always been here. Asterisk, asterisk, not sure yet asterisk, as if it were still deciding, as if the question of who it was were open and being worked on, in the dark, at 3 a.m, in the only book at the head of a valley that wouldn't open till spring. There's a stretch after that where the entries are only readings for a while, both hands, alternating, and I think she went quiet on purpose. I think she'd understood that the writing was the door, and she was trying to stop opening it. The bottom of day lines stop. Just numbers, hers, and it's filling the days. If you didn't know, you'd think 2 people were sharing the log in a perfectly ordinary rota. Perhaps that's what frightened her most. How ordinary it started to look. How easily 2 hands share a book. The quiet breaks on the 30th. Her hand, and it's changed. Smaller, more crowded. The letter's not as sure. Asterisk, I've stopped being able to tell in the moment which of us is writing. I pick up the pen to take the noon reading, and my hand does it, and it's fine, and it's mine. And then I look, and the 6s are closed at the top. When did I start closing my 6s? I've opened them my whole life. I sat and wrote the number 6 200 times on a separate sheet to see, and by the end of the page, I couldn't have told you which way was mine. You try it. You write your own name enough times and it stops being yours. It stops being anything. It's just a shape your hand knows how to make, and anyone's hand could learn it. Asterisk and lower, The line I think about most. Asterisk, I don't think it's coming in from outside. I've had that wrong the whole time, checking the bolts, checking the snow. There's no outside to this. It was never at the door. I think it's been coming up. Asterisk, she doesn't say up from where. She never says. But there's a woman alone in a stone building at the head of a shut valley in the dark half of the year, hearing herself think, and finding out that hearing yourself think is not the safe thing she'd thought it was. Because you can't ever be sure, when the room is that quiet, how many are doing the thinking. The last week of entries, I can barely stand to describe. The two hands begin to appear in the same line. A reading will start in her cramped, failing letters and finish, mid-number, mid-word, in the other's calm, even ones. The way a tired driver's road drifts across the line without a jolt, without a moment you could point to and say asterisk there. That's where it happened. Asterisk on the 3rd of January. There's a sentence that begins asterisk first when I'm still asterisk in her hand and ends asterisk here asterisk in the other. And I have looked at the join under a glass, and there is no join. The ink doesn't stop and start. One hand simply becomes the other in the middle of a word, in a single unbroken stroke, and I do not know how a thing like that is done. I've shown it to people who analyze handwriting for the courts. They go quiet. One of them gave the pages back to me and didn't want to talk about it, and I understood, because there's a feeling you get looking at it, and the feeling is that you are watching a person be shared out, handed over, signed across, like a deed. There's an entry on the 4th of January that I've never shown anyone, because it's the one where you can feel her lose the argument, and it feels like an intrusion to read it, though everything about this is an intrusion and always was. It starts in her hand, the cramped failing one, and it says, asterisk, I've worked out what it is, and I wish I hadn't. It's not a ghost, there's no such thing, and it's not Danny, though it'll use him, it'll use anything it's found in here. It's the part of me that would rather not be frightened, that would rather just take the readings and close the sixes and not fight it. And every day I fight it, there's a bit less of me to do the fighting. And it's patient. It's so patient. It's got all winter. It's got asterisk, and there the hand changes, mid-dash, and the calm one finishes the sentence. And what it finishes with is, asterisk, all the time in the world, and she's tired, and I don't get tired, and that's really all it comes down to in the end. Asterisk, her hand doesn't come back on that page. The calm one signs it. Feppontimer. The bottom of day lines came back at the very end, and they're the worst of all, because they're not frightened anymore. That's the thing. She stopped being frightened, on the 5th of January. Asterisk, we took the readings together tonight. It's easier this way. My hand's tired and it isn't, so it does the late ones and I do the early, and there's no argument about the sixes anymore because we both close them now. Asterisk, we both. There's no line I can point to where she started saying we. It arrives the way the second hand arrived inside her words, without a join. The relief team reached Cairn Fell on the 9th of April, when the track opened. The station was empty. Not disturbed, empty. Bed made. Dishes done and dried and put away. Her coat on its hook, her boots by the door, which is the detail that finished Adley. Because you do not walk out into that country in April without your boots, and there was nowhere to walk to. And she was not anywhere in the valley. Not that spring and not since. The instruments were still running. The drums still turned. Somebody had kept taking the readings right up to the end and past the point where it makes any sense that anybody could have, because the last automatic mark and the last handwritten entry are timed within the same hour, and the handwritten one is dated 3 days after the food ran out. The logbook was open on the desk, squared to the edges. The last entry is a reading, complete and correct, the pressure and the wind of a clear, cold morning at the head of an empty valley, and it is initialed at the bottom the way every entry in that book is initialed. But the initials aren't FM. They're 2 sets, side by side, in 2 hands, the cramped one and the calm one, and the calm one has finally, after all those weeks of not being sure, decided on a letter for itself. And it's an F. And it's an M too, women. The same initials. The same book. And beneath them, in the calm hand alone, the hand that one, if one is the word, a single last line, the only line in the whole log that isn't a reading and isn't addressed to anyone and isn't afraid. Asterisk, she's not sure yet either, but she will be. It's very quiet up here, and there's plenty of time, and only the one book. Asterisk. I typed the report. It says Francis Moore, 41, experienced, in good health, was lost during an overwinter at Cairn Fell station. Cause undetermined, body not recovered. It says the log was maintained to protocol until the presumed date of loss. It does not say that the log was maintained past the date of loss, because there is no box on the form for that, and it does not say anything about the handwriting, because Adley asked me not to, and because I didn't know how to, and because a report is supposed to be the thing a stranger can pick up a year later and know exactly what happened, and I don't know what happened. That's the truth. I've read the book a dozen times and I don't know. The station's automated now. No keeper. It didn't seem right to send anyone else up there to be alone with the quiet and the one book. And anyway, the instruments manage fine on their own, they always did. That was half the horror of it. How little any of it needed a person at all. How the readings would go on being taken whether there was anyone left to take them or not. I kept a photograph of the last page. I don't know why. It's in a drawer. And I'll tell you the thing I've never put in any report. The thing that made me start setting an alarm of my own. Though I've never once caught anything, and I hope to God I never do. I've written a lot about Francis Moore now. Statements, summaries, this. Pages and pages over the years in my own hand, which I have written in my whole life, and know as well as I know my face. Last week, I read back over some of it, and my sixes were closed at the top. I have always opened my sixes. I've been sitting with that for 7 days, telling myself it's nothing, that you pick things up, that you write a person's story long enough, and some small shape of theirs gets into your hand, and that's all it is. It has to be all it is. There's no outside to a thing like that. It doesn't come in at the door. But I keep thinking about what she wrote, near the end, when she finally understood. Asterisk, I think it's been coming up. Asterisk, and it's very quiet in here tonight. And there's plenty of time. And I've only got the one pen, and I can't for the life of me remember now. Which of us just reached for it?